Welcome to the Tuesday, April 25th edition, the final pre-draft edition of the PFF forecast. We will make their quay one way or another. This is going to be a great episode. We're going to talk about the Reddit commotion. That this is probably the biggest Reddit commotion since Wall Street Bets, to be honest with you. Did anyone place any bets and did anyone win any money on it? We'll talk about it. We're going to talk about how we think the kind of top 10 / that first round is going to play out. Obviously, the Rodgers trade, we'll get into that as well. I'm very curious to find out from Brad and Arjun who they think won that trade and what that means for the first round. A little Cardinals speculation as well. And we're going to close out with, if you have to place bets right now, you've been asleep at the wheel, where to go, what to bet on. It's going to be a great show. Let's rock. All right, we got to start with this Reddit thing. So I'm minding my own business, just having a wonderful day, and all of a sudden there's this buzz about Will Levis. Brad, Arjun, I'll let you guys kind of tell the story here, but kind of as you tracked it, Brad, like how did this kind of all come about?
Yeah. So I literally woke up and I was up probably before 6 a.m. this morning and it was already buzzing. A Redditor by the name of Sale Agreeable 2834, which we probably shouldn't even give him the credibility of a full name shout out, posted that Will Levis is currently 40-1. He has told his family that the Carolina Panthers have told him he is their selection. You're welcome. That's basically paraphrasing what he said. In the comments below that, people said, like, how the heck do you know this? What is your source? He claims he knows Will Levis and that he was also told this directly. The markets went from 40-1 to as low as, I think, 4-1 before they just got taken down entirely. And, throughout the rest of the day, they did open back up. The funny thing was, Bryce Young's price did not really change in any book that I saw, but they still did massively change the Will Levis price. Any other context that I missed, Arjun?
No, you didn't miss anything. The Bryce Young odds, it got dropped down from like minus 1,600 to like minus 800, and then immediately got bet back up to like minus 2,000. DraftKings, interestingly enough, it's minus 1,000 right now, so a little bit lower than or shorter than where it was. But I think I don't really understand it. I mean, it feels pretty obvious that Panthers are taking Bryce Young. The guy on Reddit probably just wanted to get a better price on Bryce Young. And honestly, I respect it. Like, you got to do what you got to do to win your bets, to get a better price, lose the vig a little bit. So I respect it. It could also be if people are on Twitter, know what I'm talking about, the Urban Redneck Syndicate. There's a guy who goes by Urban Redneck on Twitter who's been proudly boasting that he knows, and he very strongly believes that Will Levis is the perfect quarterback to run Frank Reich's system, and has been offering people even odds for Will Levis to be the number one player to be selected in this draft. So he's been a very strong proponent. He's had some messages to me that I've kind of just ignored. But it's a very funny story, and I'm hoping that, right off the bat, like, Carolina just doesn't. If Carolina takes Will Levis, it could just be a truly like a privilege of a night.
Has anyone seen Urban Redneck and Sales Agreeable in the same 4chan chat? Have they been in the same 4chan chat at the same time?
I mean, that's the question. So is he sending you messages, Arjun? Like, do you want to get some money down? Like, because this is,
like, I mean, not well, I haven't responded to him, but I know like people that I'm close to, like he's like offer, like, I'll offer you like $500 even odds that Will Levis will be the first QB taken. And so like it feels like he's gonna flake if they don't, if he.
You think so?
I think he would.
I think he's gonna honor his bets personally. I try.
He'd be down horrifically, I think, if he honors them.
What are the odds on a guy by the name of Urban Redneck on Twitter not following through with a bet? I mean,
that would be
the only thing I'll say about that is, like, if you were making this up, like just to this scheme, like I think Urban Redneck is the exact person you would point to that would like come up with this and be like, guys, I got this brilliant idea. Okay. There's all these dudes on Twitter talking about the NFL draft. They don't know anything. Let's do this. Like puts this harebrained scheme together. And his buddy's like, yeah, let's do it. I'm sure that money goes straight into an escrow account, right? If you take up his bet.
Yeah, he puts it aside for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Our friend of the podcast, Brett Coleman, tweeted out, I'm not a news guy, so please do not hold me to this standard in the future because I don't normally do this, but I feel obligated to prevent y'all from putting irresponsible bets down based on a Reddit troll. Will Levis is not going first overall, and he ain't going second either. So the piece that's interesting there is not the first overall piece, although I asked you, Brad, if you were like certain on Bryce Young, because I don't know, like, is there some weird way in which this is the ultimate, like, force the Texans into trading up to first overall and, you know, like they don't budge or something like that. But, you know, you seem pretty dead set in it. I think I agree with your logic. So we turn our attention to second, and Will Levis was getting a ton of buzz for second overall. He, according to Brett, and I don't think Brett would have any reason to kind of lie here, he's saying no. If you look at the second pick odds right now, Tyree Wilson plus 145, Will Levis plus 175, Will Anderson is 3-1, CJ Stroud is plus 350 on DraftKings. Are you in agreement with Brett?
You know, I certainly am. That was good to see from Brett. Arjun and I were talking pre-show. Sometimes he puts out things that are more theories or more his opinion. I've never seen him use this verbiage to say, like, you know, very definitively, I'm telling this as what I believe to be a fact. We also were saying we should know this, but I think he either lived in Houston in the past or was a Texans fan, or he just has connections there too. So I don't think it's a random team. I'm guessing he's not allowed to talk about Arjun's Chargers anymore because he's now, you know, directly affiliated with them. But yeah, so that is a meaningful thing to me. And I've been consistent. I sure as heck could be dead wrong, but I actually had another conversation today with another person that thinks Will Levis is not going to be a top 5 pick. We all could be wrong. But we are all, you know, this group that I talked to is fading the Levis smoke. And that certainly at least starts at 1 and 2. You know, I think maybe we're less confident about a team going to 3 or maybe Indy at 4. But certainly the top 2 picks, I do not think Will Levis is going to be one of those picks. And it's interesting, the market, especially after our Reddit hero now has Tyree Wilson as the favorite at 2 as well, I think is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like all of the leanings are towards a defensive lineman there. Do we have any sort of thought around who their second QB would be? You know, Anthony Richardson is sitting there at 30-1, whereas Stroud and Levis are plus 350 and plus 175.
You're saying Anthony Richardson is 30-1 to be the second quarterback drafted?
The second overall pick.
Okay. I don't think, like, I think if they did go quarterback, I think it actually would be Will Levis. I just don't think they're taking quarterback at this point. I think there's probably been some internal conversations. I think the big tell as well, and I think it applies to Las Vegas, which makes me less optimistic in them trading up to 3. I'll tell you right now, I actually think there's not going to be a trade in the first 7 picks of the draft. Is that, look, when you're trying very hard to go to 1, which we now know for a fact, Las Vegas and the Houston Texans were trying, you know, obviously not hard enough because they lost the battle, to go to number 1. You clearly, especially Houston sitting at 2, you have one player in mind that you really value. Again, they didn't pull it off, so they could have valued him more. But, you know, it's just like the optics of that. Then, okay, we'll just take our second choice, even though we found it worthwhile to call Chicago, have a couple conversations. It just, I think they go defense.
All right. Let's talk Rodgers trade here for a second. So the trade finally gets done. Everyone's seen it by now. Mike Greenberg having orgasms on camera. If I have to listen to him talk about Aaron Rodgers again, I'm going to throw my TV out the window. There is nothing worse than listening to Mike Greenberg. And I like Mike Greenberg. Let me rant here for a second. He's good at his job. He sucks as a fan. Like, I do not care about hearing about Mike Greenberg talk about how his, like, painful life being a Jets fan, and now there's finally hope and how excited he is. No one wants to hear it. I'm tired of it. I don't want to hear it anymore. But I do want to know what you guys think about this trade. So, Brad, was this, start with you. Was this what you were expecting, or was this different than kind of what you had thought might happen?
Yeah,
so just recapitulate the trade for everybody.
For sure. Yeah. So first point, if folks didn't notice, I've put out a mock 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0 on Twitter. The 2.0 came out on April 11th. All three of them had a swap of 15 and 13 with the Packers coming up with the Jets. So this was something that people kind of started talking about. But I'll say this. My understanding in conversations I'd had was if the swap was going to happen, it was not going to be folded into the prior trade that already was kind of being floated out as the hypothetical trade of the Jets sending the 42nd overall pick and a conditional future second that could become a first. So my quick breakdown, I think this was, if we're the starting point for us is the original leak of that being the framework, I think the Packers won working off of that deal because for two reasons. So of course, you add in the pick swap, which is not insignificant. I mean, the Eagles traded from 15 to 13 last year, I want to say. They had to give up a 4th and 2 5th-round picks to do that. The Buccaneers traded up from 14 to 13 to get Tristan Wirfs a couple years ago. They sent the 117th overall pick, I want to say. Like, it's worth something. And then the conditions on the future second, we'd heard it could be tied to the Jets making the playoffs, maybe even the Jets winning a playoff game. 65% of snaps to hit the condition is basically only an injury protection for Aaron Rodgers and nothing else. The last piece, though, we don't know yet. If Rodgers does take less money, even if it's in 2024, it makes, it softens the blow a bit for New York. But nevertheless, as of right now, with the information in front of us, I think the Packers kind of held out stronger, and won that stare down at the end of the day.
I think adding on to that, I mean, you look at how the picks translate. So if we assume if we assume that the Packers are receiving something equivalent to the 24th overall pick, from the conditional second that turned into a first. Per the Fitzgerald Spielberger chart, the draft capital alone, it results in a net surplus of around the 3rd overall pick for the Green Bay Packers, which, that seems great. But I think the one thing that a lot of the public facing work and a lot of the public charts don't fold in is what is Aaron Rodgers' value? Like, what is his value translated into a draft pick? And I think you have to include that if you're trying to really capture how much value did the Packers get, right? Because we talked about this trade happening last year. Then I mean, Rodgers is worth more than a 1st-round pick, right? But we talk about this trade happening coming off of one of the worst seasons of his career statistically, a season where the Packers missed the playoffs, so there's going to be some bias there. He's, his value translated to a draft pick may not be as high as the equivalent of a 3rd overall pick, right? So if you're trying to do your work and if you're trying to say, okay, what in reality was the trade surplus for the Packers, doing your pick surplus is definitely needed, but you have to find some way to also trying to quantify what Rodgers' value is and then fold that in as well. And I think that is definitely a part of the trade that, a lot of people won't really talk about because it's a tough thing to do. So I don't fault people for that, but based on the pick value alone, the Packers got the equivalent of the 3rd overall pick. And then obviously, depending on how Rodgers fares in New York, it will probably fall down to being the equivalent of probably a late 1st, early 2nd, I would say.
Here's the only counter I would have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, George.
No, I was just going to say, what do you guys think? Is that where you guys would put him in terms of value? Because contract matters here. Age matters, not just his performance.
So that's the thing, is that in cash next year, Aaron Rodgers is making $13.5 million more than any other quarterback in the NFL next year. So, ignore the cap. They're going to push out the option bonus. He'll have a $15.7 million cap hit, whatever. I agree. I think it's a very solid point. We're not attributing the true value. Like you said, last offseason, if Russell Wilson doesn't get moved, Rodgers is probably going for 2 firsts, 2 seconds, whatever. So that perspective is huge. But yeah, you also then if you're okay, let's say Rodgers is worth the 1st overall pick, but him plus $60 million, you subtract that from 1st overall, even though you could argue the first overall pick obviously is worth like $160 million. If you look at the 4-year value of the deal. So anyway, all sorts of different directions, but no, I think it's a sound rationale for sure.
Yeah. Arjun, what do you think his pick value is?
That's an interesting one. I mean, I didn't even bring up, the contract stuff, which like when you're trading for a player, you're not only trading for them, you're trading for their contract most of the time as well. But with quarterback contracts, they're definitely super unique with, the guaranteed structure and, the option bonus that Brad was talking about. So it's a difficult thing. I think when you're including how much money the Jets have to take on and, you're pushing that option bonus back, I think he's probably worth, a late first, early second. That's where I would put him because I think he still does have some high-end years of play. If he, is in a new scheme, he's rejuvenated. He's playing with receivers that can actually get open. He's not just throwing RPO slants or go balls to Allen Lazard. Like if he has a good scheme, which I think Hackett will bring to New York, I think he could thrive. But based on his play last year and how the kind of that season ended, I think a late first, early second, considering his contract as well, I think is where I'd put him.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't watch him closely enough last year to say that he'd fallen off a cliff. I do think he was injured last season. I think generally he plays through injury and is a tough SOB. Say what you want about Aaron Rodgers. Dude is tough and plays no matter what. And so I'm not ready to say that he's fallen off. I think there's a good chance that he has a year or 2 years back, at full health where he could be, maybe not the MVP, but could be a top 5 quarterback for sure. Now what does that mean? That means the Jets are going to the first round of the playoffs with a bye, and then losing in the first round. So like, congratulations. But, I do think like an amazing regular season is in the cards there. And what is that worth if he's back to that MVP-ish level, right? Does that kind of change the calculus a little bit? I think is an interesting one. Let's talk a little bit about what this means for the draft, because part of this was that they jumped New England, right? So they went from 15 to 13. The only team in between is the 14th overall pick, which is the New England Patriots. I guess I'm curious, is this like a throw-in to the deal, or was this like a central part of the deal? And if so, what does that mean about the first round? Because that would mean that they want to jump the Patriots for a reason, as opposed to maybe picking up, some future pick. What are we speculating there?
So we actually didn't have to speculate, which is cool. Jets general manager Joe Douglas said this was kind of the final linchpin of the deal to get it done. He had a presser today, talked about it, did say that he thinks, it's pricey. He was honest, but said, kind of admitted like we had to get this thing done. We don't think we got totally killed at the end of the day, which I think is fair. But yeah, he did say this was kind of the last piece that Green Bay was pushing for. We've talked about it a little bit, but I think it's fascinating because I do think that the positional targets align very well between New England and Green Bay. Everyone's going to say receiver. I understand it. It makes a ton of sense. I think that's Jackson Smith and Jigba. That could be where he goes. But I also think edge rusher is a massive need for both of these teams. And I think that range is where Myles Murphy, Nolan Smith, Lucas Van Ness, probably those three in that cluster could all be in that range as well. I think Green Bay really was like, we want to jump ahead of the New England Patriots for either Jackson Smith and Jigba, which would just be, absolutely incredible if they took a top 15 receiver after trading away Rodgers, or my bet still is one of those top edge rushers.
The interesting one that's been like kind of thrown out is actually Jackson Smith and the Jigba, is why the Packers wanted to jump the Patriots. So the trade happened. There was some movement yesterday, but then today, currently on from our friends at FanDuel, he's currently plus 210 to be selected by the Packers, which is ahead of the Texans and the Patriots, both of whom we gave out like very early in the process. So it is good to see some of our process, like, with the Texans and Patriots now there, and, most likely ending or closing as like 2 of the top 3 favorites. But it would be really funny. Just, everyone's going to talk about it. Oh, they trade away Rodgers and they finally take a receiver. But, they could use a Jackson Smith and Jigba. They have their outside guys with Watson and Doubs. They could really use someone like a big slot with, and, I think Smith and Jigba could fill that role very well. A little bit shifty, like Devontae, I would say. Not obviously, I'm not comping the two, but I think that is kind of maybe who the Packers wanted to jump in terms of, they wanted to jump the Patriots. But yeah, I would agree that also the edge players are probably the other group that I would say the Packers wanted to jump the Patriots for, and you kind of see that in the betting markets as they're 2-1 to draft a defensive lineman with their first pick.
Of those players, I just got to say this: Luke Van Ness feels like he's already wearing a Packers uniform.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Like, I don't know if this is like the Clay Matthews effect or what, but like, I don't know. I just feel like, I mean, he's an athletic freak. He's an edge defender. I just feel like he makes a ton of sense there. So, were the Patriots, it's interesting, were the Patriots either a team that was considering him, or they felt the Patriots could potentially trade down, a team could jump them and grab him as well. But Van Ness is the one that I just think sticks out to me. I don't know, there must be some Patriots odds here for the actual player. Where can we find those? I know that you can pick like the position, and right now on FanDuel or on DraftKings, offensive lineman was 225 for the Patriots, corner 225, wide receiver 240, quarterback 700. So defensive lineman edge was 9-1 for them. So doesn't seem like what the market would say you're jumping the Patriots for. And there would, I think, make more sense for, a JSN, for example. Yeah. But I don't know. How would we bet this, I guess, is the question.
I was just looking. I can't find a line for like team to take this player for any of those guys. Unfortunately, I bet Packers at 4-1 to take defensive line. It's now down to 2-1. So I think we may have lost a little bit of value there. But Arjun may have an idea, but I can't find anything.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're in a betting state where you can't do that.
No, that too.
Like, I think with the Packers, I think it's just so much uncertainty. That's why like you don't have a bet that's like lower than 2-1 or shorter than 2-1. Like D lineman at 2-1 and the receiver at 2-1. I think those are the favorite. I don't necessarily see them taking a tight end. They did lose Robert Tonyan to the Bears, so that could be that could be an option. But like Kincaid at 15, Mayer at 15 or 13, that's like extremely high. Like I don't think anyone's projecting them to go at 13. That is a reach, and I think Packers are under Gutekunst, like they are pretty good at like sticking close to the consensus big board. So I think it would be like kind of just arbing it or like hedging your bets where you take D lineman and receiver both at the same unit price and you secure that 1 unit or half a unit or whatever you're looking for. But that is a tough one because I think like if it's not JSN or like they could really like JSN and that's going to be his range because the over 12.5 for JSN is like minus 370. So like it is very possible that he falls to the Packers.
The correct answer is quarterback. So they're going after Will Levis. The Patriots are all in on him, and the Packers have finally gotten their quarterback of the future. How funny would it be if they took a quarterback with all the hullabaloo that we've gotten about Jordan Love and what that did with the Rodgers relationship? That'd be amazing.
It'd be truly incredible if, guys that some people refuse to put things in their body, others put mayonnaise in their coffee, just, really just mixing up the vibes in Green Bay.
Yeah, and he also eats like bananas with the peel. Is like the idea that Will Levis is just like the weirdest dude on the planet.
I mean, it looks like it. It certainly seems like it.
Yeah, it's what's weirder, eating the banana skin or putting mayonnaise in your coffee?
In my opinion, the mayonnaise is infinitely more bizarre. I mean, the banana thing's weird, but people eat fruits with the rind on. I don't know why, but like it's a thing people do. The mayonnaise in the coffee, like I feel like it's gonna curdle right away. Like it just makes no sense. The viscosity situation is off kilt. It's just everything about it.
What it would do. Like this, yeah. What does it turn into?
That's what I'm saying. Like, what is it like? Does it even impact the flavor in a noticeable way?
It should melt, right? You can use mayonnaise, like for example, instead of butter when you're searing a steak, and it works well. So it's like it's fatty, it's eggs, right? Basically
you're right.
It is.
It's lard, yeah. It's like lard and eggs.
So it should melt.
Yeah, I mean, do we have to try it now?
They put butter in coffee. There's some weirdos out there that put, and if you're one of them, no offense, but like there are people that put butter in coffee.
Someone did turn me on to the cinnamon and coffee thing, and I tried it. It's not the worst thing. I am a black coffee guy. I'm not like a hardo. It's like, oh, if you put milk in it, you're
Yeah.
weak. But like, I like the taste of coffee.
Yeah, the mayonnaise one is repulsive to me for the same reason. Arjun,
Yeah.
let's get a young person's perspective here.
I
Which
don't
one is
I don't drink coffee, so I can't speak to it
okay.
that much.
Do
So
you consume
would,
energy drinks of any kind? I gotta
No.
know. Wow, you just run on you're just raw dog in life. That's impressive.
Try to.
See,
Try to.
I did the same thing until I went to college, and then I realized I had to stay up for like multiple nights at a time. And but I drink every energy drink known to man. I once
Yeah.
went on like a 3 day, it was like 3 or 4 days where I think the only thing I had to eat was energy drinks and Adderall.
Yeah, that sounds like
Did the
college.
result
TBT.
the greatest thing. I was definitely in an interesting place. You'd be proud of me. I've gone like a week and a half without any caffeine.
That's
I'm
impressive.
like a coffee fanatic, and like I have to have it at like by 4:10 in the morning, or else I like die. And I was like, I can do this. And so now I've gone no caffeine. And
That's yeah, especially you're sitting in 6-hour meetings. Yeah, so I would be asleep by halfway through the meeting, I think.
yeah, I just got to stand up. Anyways, this is exactly why you tune in. Welcome to the Human Land podcast, everyone. Today we're going to talk about caffeine. Okay, let's move on here. By the way, before we jump to the next topic, 40% off PFF Plus subscription right now on PFF.com with promo code DRAFT40. That means you can unlock the entire mock draft simulator, all of the premium features. You can do trades, you can draft all 7 rounds, you can get rated, tell you exactly how you're doing, plus the PFF NFL draft guide, both the pre-draft version and the first time ever that we were releasing a post-draft version. All of the great locked article content. And if you sign up for an annual subscription, you get all of the PFF fantasy tools. There's some new stuff coming. We've talked about our simulator, our game play-by-play game simulator. Hint, hint, that is coming soon. You'll be able to access it as a part of your PFF Plus subscription. Some really cool fantasy tools that are coming your way. Timo Riske is in the lab. He's cooking in the kitchen, and I think it's going to be pretty cool. So you'll want to get a PFF Plus subscription, get 40% off with promo code DRAFT40. And if you're looking for a free but equally awesome product, go to the PFF Printing Press Discord, especially with a few days left to the draft. That's where any news will drop. We'll talk about how to bet it accordingly. So get in there. The link is in the description, or you can hit us up on Twitter and find it there as well. Some speculation around what the Cardinals might do. They've already changed their uniforms. People hated them, which I thought was a little unfair, to be perfectly honest. I mean, they're fine. They're not terrible. But some Cardinals connections here. Now, they're picking at 3. We've kind of talked about how they could be a trade down candidate. What are we hearing at this moment, Brad?
Well, the tying in the uniform is interesting because the rumor right now floating around is that Ohio State tackle Paris Johnson is an apple of Kyler Murray's eye. He apparently is a big fan of the player. Mike Garafolo put that out. I say it's connected because he would not have to change jerseys. I think he could just bring his Ohio State jersey and no one would even notice the difference between his Ohio State jersey and the new Arizona Cardinals jersey because they're the exact same thing. But nevertheless, that's the rumor. They really like offensive line. Some people have said Jonathan Gannon thinks he can kind of coach up the defense and maybe use his, abilities as a defensive coach to, hey, let's fix the offense first. I think it does make some sense. Look, I mean, they just extended their left tackle last offseason, but definitely have a need at right tackle, maybe even right guard if they want to start him at the beginning. But anyway, that's been out from a couple different outlets. I think the first person to put it out was Tony Pauline at Pro Football Network, and we've now Peter King mentioned it in his Monday morning quarterback. It's kind of been all around at this point.
Yeah, I'm a little shocked with that, honestly. I mean, Paris Johnson does feel like a reach compared to just taking a safe is a strong word, but like taking the player who's ranked near the 3rd overall pick with like a Will Anderson or even like a Tyree Wilson versus a Paris Johnson. But yeah, I could see like if this new regime is just trying to keep Kyler happy, trying to keep him like motivated or whatnot, then taking someone that he vouches for could be something that does that. There could be some not major issues, but making Paris Johnson switch from left tackle to right tackle. because they have DJ Humphries at left tackle. But yeah, I mean, Jonathan Gannon, he's done, work with more with less. So I wouldn't be surprised if he thinks, he has a mindset he can coach up a defense and they go with some, play in the trenches to start. But it's been weird because the Cardinals for most of the offseason have been like minus 180, minus 200 to draft a D lineman with their first pick. Now on DraftKings, they're plus 125 to draft a D lineman, plus 150 to draft an offensive lineman. And Paris Johnson's like plus 350 to be the third overall pick. So a lot of smoke there. I actually mocked Paris Johnson to the Cardinals in my like latest mock draft on Twitter. So I wouldn't be completely surprised. But I wouldn't really, I think, advise for it. And if someone like Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson or even like a Jalen Carter, if they're willing to take the chances there, I'd rather just roll with one of these defensive guys and, prioritize offensive line later.
It's interesting because the whole story around Kyler Murray liking a player and that being the reason that you're going to pick him is like the most ridiculous reason to pick a player. It's so absurd. And that's the only reason I think it makes sense for the Cardinals, because they don't do anything that makes sense. So like as absurd of a call as this might be, it would be so like the Cardinals to pick a player to appease Kyler Murray, to then get the first overall pick, to pick Caleb Williams and get rid of Kyler Murray. So like, that's how this is going to work out.
It also, like, and I'm being serious, not even joking, when you put stuff out like that, now that I've been in this business long enough, to me that signals, okay, if the pick stinks, they can blame Kyler Murray. Be like, well, look, we tried to do the quarterback a solid. We took his guy. We actually liked name whatever player pans out the best in the first couple of years. Yeah. So
that's amazing. Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Still ridiculous. Still absolutely absurd. So it's interesting. Is the value there just to take Paris Campbell plus 350 because no team's going to be stupid enough to trade with the Cardinals at this point?
I don't think anyone's going to trade with them. And I will say maybe the thought was that was their pick if they got a trade down, because I do think he'll probably make it through the first 5-6 picks. Hey, maybe they're sitting there at 3, no one's calling, and they just go ahead and do it. I think the market's gone though. I wouldn't bet it now. There's no value left. Yeah.
One of the interesting things, and I agree with you, that there's not really a lot of value left, but thinking about teams that operate in silos. So one of the things, like if you're not looking at what the market is going to pay for something, you can end up making a really way off base offer, right? So I've talked about this a bunch. It's like, I love In-N-Out Burger. I'm not going to go pay $100 for an In-N-Out Burger. Like I love it, but it's $5, $7, whatever it is. That's kind of the beauty of it. The Raiders did this a couple times, right? Where they went and they said, I love this In-N-Out Burger so much, I'm going to give you $1 million for it, right? The Patriots did that in free agency. It's like, going out there and like not totally understanding what the market is going to offer. That's how you end up with Clelin Ferrell at 4. I'm curious if you guys think that's something that the Cardinals could be, doing, where you're not actually taking into account of the information that's out there. You're stubborn. You're like, no, our big board is the only thing that matters. Not looking at the market consensus. And it wouldn't be nearly as big a reach as Clelin Ferrell, but it would be a decent reach, right? I mean, when do we expect him to go, 8, 9, 10?
The only thing I would say to be kind to them is, in my opinion, and just the consensus, the depth at edge is far stronger than the depth at tackle. And they maybe just say, look, is it a 5-pick reach? Sure. But we're taking the number 1 tackle on the board, who's young, who's apparently like, all Big Ten academics every single year, like a great person, a great player, positional fluidity. And then we can address edge later. But also it came to them just ignoring, if you ignore consensus big board, you go back and look at it down the road, like you said, you end up with a lot of Clelin Ferrells and Damon Arnett's, and I'll just name every Raiders first round pick of the last 5 years.
Every Raiders draft pick. That's incredible. Okay, so let's kind of close out here with let's kind of pair these together. So what are we thinking from a top 10 perspective? And I'll let you guys kind of put this one together. So Brad, what do you think happens in the top 10? And then Arjun, where do you see some differences, or where are kind of the pivot points that you think most likely things would be to change?
If I had to guess right now, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if there are no trades the first 7, like I mentioned, and maybe through the entire first 10. I say 7 because I think Atlanta, Chicago, and Philadelphia could be trade down teams. But I really, as of right now, think that like Houston, if they want to trade down, and Arizona, which we know they're desperate to trade down, they might ultimately just not have a partner in that endeavor. So, I mean, rattling it off, like I'll go Bryce Young, Tyree Wilson, Will Anderson, Anthony Richardson. Jalen Carter is tough. Like I think he goes 5 or 6. And then let's say Jalen Carter 5, Devin Witherspoon 6, Christian Gonzalez 7. No, Peter Skoronski 7, Christian Gonzalez 8, Paris Johnson 9, and I don't know who you got for the Eagles, Arjun.
Van Ness or Nolan Smith, probably D line. I think.
Yeah,
I think like I mean Skoronski to them, just like if he falls to them, I think it's like unless Carter's there. If Skoronski's there, I think that's the pick. Makes a lot of sense for them. I know like people say like how he's not going to take a guard, but he's really like a guard tackle. So you're getting like kind of the best, not the best of both worlds, but like he'll eventually make that transition. So I think Skoronski's floor is 10, but we've kind of like pounded the table for Skoronski to be a top 10 pick. I know we've kind of like put that in the Discord. And like, I guess the only worry I have is like, say Howie has like a trade partner at 10, that person's probably not trading up to take Skoronski. So like if Eagles trade out, Dream is probably dead, but that's a draft day thing. And I even if Eagles trade up, I could see like the Bears taking him. I could see the Raiders taking Skoronski as you mock them too. So we have outs for some of our bets. I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think Lions is probably the most interesting one because I think they have the farthest range of outcomes where they could go corner, they could go edge, they could go interior D line, they could go quarterback if someone like Richardson falls. So I think Lions are probably a point where like it swings how the rest of the draft goes, or at least like the rest of like the top 15. And the Jalen Carter one, I mean, like you said, Strager had him saying his floor is 6, but just the off-field issues kind of give me a lot of worry with like how teams might perceive him. And like, I know the in-person visits might help, but I could legitimately see him falling to the Bears at 9, which to me, his floor is 9 with the Bears. And I could see him falling down there.
Cool with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say the Christmas for Brad. Now, what's really going to happen is the Bears are going to take Bijan Robinson, and it's really going to be a spectacular day for Brad. We're going to need to have an intervention for Brad if that happens.
We will. I will be on full tilt if that happens.
Man, full tilt poker. Man, rest in peace. I think that your points are really good there. And I was kind of wondering, so what are sort of the craziest things that you might prognosticate in the top 10? Because I think the way that you guys have mapped it out makes a lot of sense considering what we know about the odds in the market and what we know about the teams. So, something like a Will Levis going 1, we've talked about that already. I was actually thinking back to the last time a player that was expected to go pretty high fell because of some kind of weird off-season situation. And the one that came up to me, I was remembering the Laramie Tunsil one because he just signed a big deal. But that something like that we haven't seen in a while. That could be a crazy thing that could happen. Someone kind of trying to blackmail somebody. Jalen Carter's gotten tangled up in some stuff before. Like that could be a reason that things kind of get super wacky. Some sort of big trade up. That could happen. Some team reaching, right? So the Cardinals reach, maybe it's not a Paris Johnson, but like an even bigger reach. But there's certainly something that is going to be wacky and wild. Curious if you guys have any what's the weirdest thing that we could see happening?
Go ahead, Arjun. You look like you got something on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah, it would be Hendon Hooker, like going like the top 15.
Yeah.
Like
wow.
If he's selected before any of the big 4, like I'll be shocked. Look, I mean, I would say like a lot of the sharp teams who have an analytics department that's building draft models, age is a big factor in those models. Like I know that for a fact. Like age helps determine projection, it helps determine your ceiling, it helps determine your probability of becoming a Pro Bowl and all pro. Like when teams are constructing their draft models in their analytics room, like you have to include age. So that kind of leads me to like rule out some of like, the Vikings or like the Eagles, like not Eagles are not going to take a quarterback, but like the Vikings or um I don't really know what other quarter or what other team that would take a quarterback would fit in that range. But if Hooker goes to like the Titans, right? I mean, like Tennessee,
Washington, maybe.
yeah, Tennessee is right in Hooker's back. Like the Titans are right in Hooker's backyard, vice versa. Like we saw that with Pickett last year, where like Pittsburgh had right down the street, they had a close-up view of Pickett. Like I could see Tennessee falling in love with him if that run on quarterbacks actually happens in the top 4, top 8, or top 9, and they just want to take a quarterback. Like I could see Hooker being that guy, but it would be like I would be shocked if he goes in that top 15. Like I kind of like already like mentally prepared myself for him to be selected in the first round. And like I've done a good job of not betting him not to go in the first round because I'm coaching my bets and I don't want to do that. But if he goes before any of the big 4, like I would be extremely shocked. And it would have to be something related to like Stroud's S2 scores, or there's a medical, or there's some character issues we haven't heard about that would force Hooker to go above the top 4.
I can't top that. I mean, that's as good as it gets right there. I would just say like the craziest thing to me would be if we get one receiver in Jackson Smith and Jigba, and we get 2 running backs in Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round, which I'm not saying I think is going to happen, but I don't. I think there's a non-zero chance it happens, and I think that would be kind of crazy.
That would be something. What would be something? I feel like something really weird is going to happen, but we'll see. We'll post in the Discord if we get any good ideas. Let's get out of here on this. No time like the present to play some draft props. If you haven't already, we've obviously been betting these for a while, but at this point in time, are there any that we like that we feel kind of most confident about that people can go in and get involved with? Brad, let's start with you.
Yep. So I have an article coming out tomorrow. I'll share one of those. It's 4 plays that I like still, which obviously, not a lot of offerings available, but kind of connecting some dots here, some tea leaves. Jaguars general manager Trent Baalke had a media availability. He was asked about Cam Robinson, who's recovering from a meniscus injury in December. And the question was, is he going to be ready in training camp? And he said, physically, he'll be ready. And it was a very weird way to answer the question. No one implied there was another reason why he would not be available. And there's now kind of a bunch of speculation of, is he potentially facing a suspension? Is there something else going on here? Because it was a very strange way to answer the question. So it's 4-1 right now. Last time I checked, to bet Jacksonville Jaguars to take an offensive lineman. I not only think it's a good range for guys like Anton Harrison, but also their left guard, Ben Barch, will not be ready physically for training camp. No other reason. And Osiris Torrance, I think, maybe starts, in that range of mid to late 20s. So yeah, it's just like everyone's mocking, every position to them, I feel like, besides O-line, because we kind of think they're set there. And I think it's, a decent value right now, just looking at all the tea leaves.
Mayo in your tea, Brad?
Mayo in your tea leaves.
All right, Arjun, about you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've talked about all the bets that I've really liked over the past couple weeks. I think, I'll just give one that I think is probably going to happen. It's the Chargers to take a tight end. The interesting thing about Tom Telesco is he's never, it's like a lot of noise, but he's never taken the same position twice in the first round ever. And tight end is one of the positions he hasn't taken yet. So you follow that like weird trend, obviously you don't want to use that only as your analysis. They're 3-1 on DraftKings to take a tight end. I just don't see any of the receivers matching their physical profiles that they like. I know Jordan Addison has the connection with Chris Beatty, who's the Chargers receiver coach who was recruiting Addison when he was at Pittsburgh. But again, Addison is 5'11", 6 foot, weighs 171 pounds, which is 30 pounds lighter than the weighted average of the Chargers receivers drafted under Tom Telesco. So I don't necessarily see them taking Isaiah Flowers or Jordan Addison. I think all the edge guys like Murphy, Van Ness, and Smith are all snapped up before 21, which leaves me to believe that it would be Michael Mayer who's on the board and would be the pick for the Chargers. Kellen Moore loves tight ends. He needs them to kind of like operate his offense, and Mayer kind of fits the run blocking / receiving profile that he wants. And again, I think that's kind of just one missing, not the only missing piece of the Chargers offense, but a piece that I think Telesco and Moore and Staley would look at and say, okay, that's a good player. They would kind of like forego the whole surplus value and like development curse thing and take Michael Mayer to kind of fill that need. So that's kind of like my homer bet, but also there's a decent amount of analysis filled into there. And I think the Chargers could go tight end at 21.
Yeah, that's interesting. By the way, my the one that I was going to come back to was Cowboys to pick a running back. That's now plus 175 on DraftKings. So don't love that so much anymore, but it seems like the script has gotten out, and we just all know that Jerry Jones is going to roll that way.
Wait, George, which one did you give out?
I can't remember what exactly we got it at. Was it 6-1? Cowboys to draft Bijan or something like that.
Well, I don't know if Bijan makes it to. I actually tweeted this out like an hour ago. So on DraftKings, it's plus 175, but on FanDuel, Cowboys to draft a running back is 14-1. So you got to let's line shop a little bit here. I think someone probably
I didn't realize. Wow.
Yeah,
well, then that's the one I'm giving out. Cowboys to take a running back 14-1 on FanDuel, because there's multiple opportunities, right? You mentioned the Bijan one where they probably have to trade up, but then maybe they sit there and they take Jahmyr Gibbs or something like that. Be banana land, but I'll ride with that long shot. All right, this is the last one before the draft is over on Sunday. We'll recap it all, talk about what hit, what didn't, hopefully count some checks, and talk about who won the draft. So it'll be a lot of fun. Join us on Sunday for that full recap show. And it'll be great for me because I don't have to worry about it. The Niners, they can't piss me off this year. We get to just watch Brad and Arjun bemoan. Maybe they'll both take quarterbacks, Bears and Chargers. Bijan to the Bears and Jahmyr Gibbs to the Chargers.
It's just cruel. Just cruel stuff.
All right. We love you all. Join the Printing Press Discord. We'll see you on Sunday. Peace.